Obviously, we're here today to talk about the transgender ban that Trump has proposed and that you spoke out against. So I guess the first question is, how realistic do you think this ban is for it actually to become law?
Well, it's fascinating to watch the reaction by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, because essentially the very next day they said, we're not following that tweet. They're going to wait for regulations. They're going to wait for orders from the Secretary of Defense. There's also a study being conducted on the transgender issue that's supposed to be done by this December. And so I think the Pentagon was caught off guard, and it's not something that they wanted the president to do the way he did it.
So I know they said they're waiting for, an actual order because it was just a tweet, right? But if those orders do come, do you think it could actually happen?
It could. I think there would be lawsuits. I served on active duty in the military, and there really is no rational basis for excluding an entire class of people. In the military, we don't actually care who you love, what your sexual orientation or gender identity is. We just care if you can shoot straight and complete the mission. And so there is no evidence that a sniper who's transgender is any less accurate than a sniper who is gay or a sniper who is straight. So I could see the court striking this down because it violates equal protection and also has no rational basis.
That was another one of my questions. Yeah. Does this have any rational basis are there any facts to conclude that even, they're not going to be able to work for a couple months or anything like that?
There really is no rational basis, because we already have transgender people in the military right now who have met other qualifications. They're being patriotic, they're serving our country, and they're doing a great job. There's been no evidence that somehow it's transgender people or less qualified to serve in the military than anybody else. Senator John McCain came out shortly after the president did his tweet and said anyone who meets their standards for military duty ought to be able to continue serving.
If this ban does, eventually come to play, what effect will it have on trans service members here in California?
A lot of it depends on how the regulations get sent out. My sense is there's such great pushback that maybe those won't even happen at all. So that's my hope. But if they do get sent out, it depends on how these regulations are worded. There may be ways to keep the military folks who are transgender currently still in the military, and maybe this applies to new recruits. But even then, I think the courts might strike that down, because really there is an equal protection and legal problem with what the president's trying to do.
Right. With what the president is trying to do you think it will affect, trans members who are veterans and are receiving veterans benefits?
That's a great question. I don't know, so I will look into that. Although his tweet did not seem to discuss veterans benefits.
Right.
Right.
What are some of the things that we can do locally, both as elected officials and as regular citizens, to try to keep this from happening?
So, speaking the truth, showing up to protests and rallies, writing letters to members of Congress and U.S. senators, also calling their offices as well as calling the White House, all of that is very helpful. In addition, coming up with stories about transgender Americans who have served their country and letting the White House know about that, I think that's helpful as well.
Colonel in the Air Force, thank you for your service. But since you are in the Air Force,
right,
do you have any knowledge that you're able to share with us about?
Yeah, so I'll tell you about what happened when I served on active duty in the 1990s. So I'm a JAG, and it's a military prosecutor as well as military attorney, and it was under Don't Ask, Don't Tell at the time. And it was a really pretty stupid policy, because you had people go into hiding, but you also had all these cases where commanders were upset that they were losing their members, because these were qualified individuals and commanders did not want to lose them because they were doing a fine job. And I think the military learned from that and realized it really doesn't matter, what your sexual orientation or gender identity is. It's, can you complete the mission? And that really should be the standard.
There are obviously other government officials and congressmen and women that have served. I actually don't know how many of them have spoken out in the same way that you have. Are there quite a number of people that have spoken out?
Yes, including Republicans. So, I was glad to see Senator John McCain come out and make the statement he did. Senator Orrin Hatch a fairly conservative Republican senator, also made statements basically saying that, this is not fair and, transgender military folks should be able to serve. So you're seeing some pushback.
When Trump was campaigning, he said that he would protect, the LGBT people.
Yeah.
This is obviously not protecting them.
Yeah.
I'm sure he thinks it's compassionate, but
no, he lied.
Yep. Do you think this was an actual? He surprised everyone. Do you think this was an actual plan that he had, or do you think maybe this is just a distraction? What do you think his reasoning is?
So I don't know if he actually knew what the T meant in LGBT, but if he did know what it meant, he clearly lied when he was campaigning. This is not protecting transgender Americans. It's doing exactly the opposite. And really, it's also harming our military. We have an all-volunteer military. We need to attract and recruit people from all across America. And to take an entire class of people and say you cannot join the military means the military is going to lose out on highly qualified individuals. And at a time when we still depend on our volunteer military, that is exactly the wrong message to send, and it's going to hurt our military readiness.
So in your mind, the argument that, well, they're going to have to, they have a medical procedure that they know they might or might, there are some that do, some that don't go through the procedure.
Right.
But in your mind, that's completely irrelevant to service.
Yes, because right now, studies show that the military spends 5 times as much on Viagra if you then took that money compared to how much military would spend even if every single transgender person needed some medical assistance. So we're already prescribing medication and spending money for men in the military. And, it's something that the military does because we view people as human beings.